Hey everybody, Ben here from the Bonehead podcast, and welcome to Top 5 Friday. On a Friday, we get together and we have a look at the top 5, something normally to do with Blood Bowl. Now, this one's been brewing up for a good couple of weeks now, so sorry to keep you waiting, but we had a great suggestion from one of the viewers, Trashfire, put up a suggestion saying, hey, what about top 5 common rules mistakes or common things that people get wrong during a game of Blood Bowl? And we had a ton of comments, some really great comments. So what I wanted to do is take the time to put kind of the answers to those top 5 bits as well. Now, a couple of them are definitely worth us addressing in a Theory Thursday sometime soon. But for now, let's have a look at your top 5 common Blood Bowl mistakes. Number 5 was Frenzy. Now, this Frenzy topic it covers lots of different things, and you know what, let's have a talk through. So, Frenzy is a general skill that basically means if you push a guy back, you get to follow up and block again. Now, this is a huge benefit to a skill if you are a high strength player. So, Minotaurs, probably one of my favourite players in the game, are so good because they're strength 5, and when they're blitzing they're strength 6, and they get to go frenzy block. If it's a push, they get to follow up and push it and take another block. This can give you 2 2-die blocks or 2 3-die blocks. That's what I normally refer to as a 4-die block or a 6-die block, because actually, when else do you get to throw that many block dice at an opponent? Now, you guys mentioned a few things that you were unsure of, or actually people get wrong quite frequently, so it made sense to have a little checklist here for us to talk through. So the first thing is, if you're rushing, if you've moved all your squares and you are blocking or blitzing with this dude, well, you can't move, it has to be a blitz. If you run out of movement, so a Troll Slayer is a great example here. Troll Slayers have Frenzy if they've moved, 5 squares or whatever. If a Minotaur's already moved 5 squares and they make that block and they Frenzy, so they move in, they make a block, they've run out of movement, but they have to follow up and block again, you have to take the rush roll. So if you normally you can choose, right? So you go up, you blitz, you get to choose whether to follow up or not. Frenzy, you have to follow up, and you have to make that second block. The only way you can kind of game this to not be the case, and this is definitely something to think about, especially because of the way Frenzy works, you may end up putting yourself into a bad situation on your second block. If you use all your squares of movement beforehand and you've got nothing left to do, so you've used both of your go for it's, you will not be able to make the follow-up block. So it's definitely a cunning strategy, but as it stands, you must make a rush, you must make a go for it to make that next block on the Frenzy. If you are going up against Stand Firm, you will still get the second block. If you would push them back, but they say, no, I don't, because I've got Stand Firm. Okay, so if you are attacking a Golem or a Nobility Bodyguard who have got Stand Firm, if you push them, or if you both down and have Juggernaut, which would be a push, that's a complicated one, let's ignore that for now. If you push them, but they stand firm to stay still, it counts as being pushed. You get to make the next block. So you get to do that double block. So stand firm does not end Frenzy. Now, if you've got block on your Blitzer, on your Frenzy boy, and your opponent's also got block, and you roll both down, that will stop the Frenzy. So if you've pushed on Frenzy, you can follow up and make the block. If they're standing firm, you don't get to follow up, but you've still pushed, you get to make that second block. With a both down, you're not pushing them back. Okay, what it does is it stops you from going down. If you've got block and they've got block and you roll block, the block should end and the block will end, because one of you should be going down to the ground, but if you've both got block, you don't. So block both down on a Frenzy will stop Frenzy. Stand Firm does not stop Frenzy if it would have been push. Now, there are 2 other skills that definitely get confusing when you use them with Frenzy as well. Now, Dauntless is the skill where you get to roll a dice to see if you become as strong as your target on that block. You have to roll for both blocks if you're rolling Frenzy. This is the classic Troll Slayer combination. So if the Troll Slayer wants to Frenzy block an Ogre, it will have to roll for that first block to see if it gets Dauntless, make the block. If you get a pushback and you follow up and you make another block, you have to roll Dauntless again, and the same is true of Foul Appearance. So if you are making a block against a big boy here, like a Foul Appearance Bloater from the Nurgle team, You've got to roll that foul appearance roll for the first block and then roll it again for the second block. So foul appearance is quite useful against frenzy teams. And the last thing to mention when it comes to frenzy is recheck your assists on that second block. So you've frenzied once, you've pushed them back, you're not just rolling the same dice pool again. So if you got a 2-die block the first time, when you follow up, it's a brand new block. Okay, so you then have to reassess all of your assists. Blocking with frenzy can be pretty dangerous. It can be pretty grievous and magical as well. So definitely worth doing. But look at where you're likely to go, because each block is independent. So you will be rechecking your blocks on that second one as well. Number 4 is deviate, scatter, and bounce. Now these are 3 bits of terminology that come in multiple places in Blood Bowl. The most obvious one is to doing stuff with the ball, okay? The ball will deviate, the ball will scatter, the ball will bounce, the rules will say that. They also are used for things like throw teammate and throwing bombs. So these are terminologies that you're going to come across, and it's important to get them right because it really does change the flow of the game. The difference in the 3, deviate, D6, squares in direction, D8. That is kickoff. Okay, think about it. Deviate, it deviates at kickoff. That's the same thing. It will also come up in wildly inaccurate passing as well. If you mess up a pass really badly and it ends up flying off in a random direction, it's the same as a kickoff. It's that deviate. It's that D6 by D8. Scatter. Scattering is what happens with an inaccurate pass. So if you're hooning the ball down, you're throwing a goblin, you're making an inaccurate pass, which can be difficult to do sometimes with certain throwers, it will go D8, but you roll it 3 times sequentially. So it will go D8 to D8 to D8, then it lands. So if you're throwing an inaccurate bomb, it does nothing the first 2 times. On the third one, that's the square that it's going to be in. Same is true of a bomb, same is true of a flying player. Also, and this is something that people flagged up many times, and this is something that we have got wrong on the Bonehead Championship many times, is if the changing weather result is rolled on the kickoff table, it used to be it scatters 1 extra time before it lands. Now it scatters, which is D8 times 3. So if the weather changes on the kickoff result, you will D8 it 3 times before it lands on the ground. So deviate for kickoff and wildly inaccurate, scatter for inaccurate passes and changing weather, and then the bounce, or dropping the ball. If you chuck the ball to a dude and he doesn't catch it, it's going to bounce. It's going to go D8. It's going to end up in that D8 square next door to you. That will also be the case if you go to throw teammate and you fumble it, you will drop him. You will drop the dude and it will be D8. So a couple of things to mention here which are also frequently picked up is -1 to catch for any of these. So this is again something that changed from the old edition to the new edition, and it's taken us a while to kind of get used to this. But if you are catching the ball, if you are rolling to catch something that wasn't given to you on purpose, generally speaking, it's going to be -1 to that catch. So if you're catching a bouncing ball that's been scattered D8, landed on the ground, you're going to be -1. If the scatter has happened for a wildly inaccurate pass or a changing weather result, going to be -1. Basically, if it's a handoff or an accurate pass, you're good to go. Otherwise, it's -1. And the other call out here is throw-ins. This kind of all ties in together, and the throw-in is a rule that we've got wrong many times as well because it's hard. There's just something wrong with the rule. It just doesn't fit right. But when you throw in the ball, the first square that it comes on is the last square that it was on the pitch. Okay, that's a really cool thing. So Blood Bowl is a grid-based game. The ball will have a path. A player will have a path, and it will have been in one square. When the ball comes back on, it will start on the last square it was on the pitch, but that square is square 0. So when it's coming back on, you put the ball on that square, then you throw it in 2d6 or however you're working with that addition. So the last square the ball was on is number 0. Number 3 was arguing the call and bribes. Now that is... To be fair, number 3 and number 4 were very close with the amount of people who were talking about it. It does mean that it sounds like you guys are using secret weapons and fouling as much as you are throwing the ball around. So that's fun. That's a good place of Blood Bowl to be. Either nobody's fouling and no one's throwing, or everyone's fouling and everyone's throwing. Or you're just all goblin players, and I completely support that. Anyway, arguing the call and bribes. We're going to start at the bottom and work our way up. So secret weapons. This is something that we get wrong all of the time, and you always have to check. You're a goblin player, you're a snotling player, you've got a bombardier, you've got a chainsaw guy. At the end of the drive, that guy gets sent off, whether they're on the pitch or not. So if you've got a chainsaw guy or a ball and chain dude who's knocked out, you don't argue the call until the end of the drive. It's not right then and there. So they get knocked out, and then at the end of the drive, you will roll for being sent off. I've had to go back and double check the rulebook on this one, and this is how it came out. Now, at the point of being sent off, so this is if you've rolled a doubles on a foul, or the end of the drive and you've got a secret weapon, this is when this will trigger. And your action order will be 1, you can argue the call. Now, arguing the call allows you to roll a dice, and on a 6, the referee's like, you know what, good point, I agree with you. A 2 through 5, nothing exciting happens. And on a 1, you've really upset the referee, and they send you off, which means you can't argue the call anymore. That is going to be very important, because if you fail that roll, you don't roll a 6, you can then use a bribe. Now, a bribe allows you to roll a dice, and on a 2+, you're good to go, unless you upset the ref by rolling a 1 by arguing with him. So, argue the call. Don't roll a 1. If you haven't successfully argued the call, as in you haven't rolled a 6, you can then use a bribe, which is going to be a 2+. On a 1, the dude's still sent off. Basically, you're doing all this. Don't roll 1s. Unless you have bribery and corruption. Now, this is something that came up at Beachhead, okay? And this was Gary, friend of the show. He called me over as a rules question and was like, hang on, I just want to clarify something. My bribery and corruption special rule. Now, bribery and corruption is a special rule for your team. So Black Orcs have it, Goblins have it, Snotlings have it. You're thinking, cool, I get half-price bribes. That's fantastic. It is fantastic, but also bribery corruption teams re-roll a 1 to argue the call once per game. So if you argue the call with a Black Orc team, whatever, and you roll that 1, first time you roll that 1, you re-roll it. So it's an actual really useful little benefit that I hadn't considered the team to have. But as it stands, this is how arguing the call and bribes works in Blood Bowl 2020. Number 2, and this is absolutely the best candidate we've got for doing a Theory Thursday, so spoiler alert, that's what we're going to be talking about next week. Blocking assists. Now, this also includes fouling assists. This is all about assists, okay? If you're blocking a dude, if you're fouling a dude, there are going to be other dudes around it. He's a dude, she's a dude, they're all dudes, but do they give assists? That's the question. So the person doing the assisting, okay, so this is what we call the power of friendship on the show, marking the blocker/target. So if you are the blocker, your assist must be marking your target. If you are the target, your assist must be marking the blocker, and they themselves must be unmarked except for marking the blocker and or assist, blocker or target. So if you are being blocked, your assists can come from people on your side who are only in base contact with your people and the attacker. Okay, if you are attacking, you're looking for assists who are friendly and are not in base contact with anybody except friendly models and the target. No wonder this is so confusing. So what we're going to do on Theory Thursday is we're going to go through some examples on the pitch, because it's really important to do that, because it's a huge element of Blood Bowl and it's something that people can get wrong, and you can get wrecked if you get it wrong. The other thing is it works I don't know if it works slightly differently than before, but we have to think about it a slightly different way now. It doesn't do anything except boost up the strength of who you're assisting. Now, this is huge, because what you want to do is you want to get more than your opponent or more than double your opponent. Okay, so strength 7 against strength 3 dice. If you've both got an assist, that's only 2 dice now, because you're strength 8 against strength 4. So 1 assist on each side is not equal in all things. In fact, having 1 assist on one way or another is going to, generally speaking, benefit the defender, because it's harder to get that triple power roll. So it boosts the assist. Now, there's a couple of skills that really come into play when it comes to marking: guard and defensive. So guard gives +1 strength to your friend, even if you are marked. Okay, guard is... in guard we trust, right? Guard is a great skill. Defensive is the new skill that is there to kind of counter guard, but sadly it only kind of counters it sometimes when things are lined up right. So defensive, which is an agility skill that no one's really taking just yet, marked players by the defensive player can't use guard on their own turn. Okay, so on your turn, your opponent's people with guard always going to have guard. On your opponent's turn, their guard players don't get to use guard if they're next to one of your defensive players. Now, the interesting thing here is I feel like that just paints massive target on the defensive players because they're going to get jolly smushed. Move your markers. This one came up about 7 billion times. And I wanted to just cover everything when it comes to move your markers. This is a catch-all term for make things visible, be open with information. Okay, it's going to speed up gameplay, which is the biggest thing. Okay, your opponent doesn't have to ask what's this, but it keeps things clean. Blood Bowl is a great game. As far as war games go, the rule set is actually very good and very clean, apart from all the fouling obviously. So it's really important that your visibility of information is as accurate as possible. Move your turn marker. In the olden times, there was a rule that was called... oh, great! I can't remember what it's called. That's fantastic, because it was a horrible rule, and you shouldn't use it. You shouldn't have used to use it, and now it's gone. So I'm not even gonna try and remember what it was called. You've got to move your turn marker. Start your turn by moving your turn marker. If your opponent doesn't start their turn by moving that marker, just remind them. Okay. Now, a really good way to do this is whether you're playing competitively, friendly, or whatever. Just call out the turn. Okay. So it's the end of your turn 4. You could be like, right, that's the end of my turn 4. Over to you. Your turn 4. And then my turn 4. There we go. And at the beginning of your turn, go, okay, right, my turn 5. Now, it's really important because there will be definitely times where you're like, are we on 5 or 6 or what? And that can be massive. Okay. Reroll markers and leader. If you use a reroll, move that marker. If you've got the leader skill, make sure that you've got something else marking that you've got leader and that you've used leader, because the dude with leader probably going to die. Just a free bit of advice there. People with leader, people with kick, they're going to die. It's a very sad thing. Nuffle does not like people who try to game the system, and these are both skills that game the system. So look to lose those players. Turn your players. Okay, I don't know how you want to do it, but how we do it and how I've seen it done basically everywhere is when you've finished moving one of your players' models, you turn them round to face you. And at the beginning of the turn, or the end of the turn, you face them all against your opponent. There's 2 reasons for that. One is you want your models to be facing your opponent as much as possible. It helps them to see what's going on. Normally, if you've got numbers on your players' bases, they're facing front as well. So it just helps again with that clarity of information. Clarity of information means no field ads, which is really important. But secondly, less time wasted because they're going to go, oh, blitzer. All right, if you turn everybody around and they all look the same from the back, your opponent's can get messy, and nobody wants that, because then you're like, well, I didn't know that guy was a blitzer because you've hidden him and he's anyway. Turn your players, make sure that you know who's activated, and it helps make sure that your opponent can see what's going on the board. If you've got bribes, if you've got a wizard, if you've got apothecaries, have a token, have a marker, have a model, okay? And then when you're done with that model, put them in the sin bin, put them back in your box, put them back on your display tray, whatever it works. Then you know that it's been used. And if you're really fancy, use a blitz marker so that you know when you've blitzed in that turn. There are some great options out there, a little lightning bolt to put next to a dude. You know, there was a great token that Charlie Victor's done recently. You've got your blitz marker. I've used it this turn. Put it on the pitch, put it on the side. Just make sure that you know that you've used that blitz marker. It's a really important thing, and it's really basic. And it's because it's so basic that this is the first thing that people forget. But it can also mean you end up playing 14 or 18 turns per game. And that just, actually, you know what? More Blood Bowl is more better. But it's got to be a good game, and it's got to be a good competition. And there you have it. That was the top 5 common rules mistakes. There were some absolutely brilliant suggestions out there as well for some other stuff, right the way from, you know, what's the correct process for standing up your dude, for doing this, for doing that. Blood Bowl is a complicated rule set. there are some questions, and where it's been rewritten into Blood Bowl 2020, it is less codified than it was in the olden days. And you know what? That's okay. The most important thing to do is that you clear it up with your opponent. Jump on our videos and put a comment, jump in on Discord and ask some questions. There are great Blood Bowl players out there. Most of it is written in the rulebook, some of it definitely isn't, and every 6 months we hope that Games Workshop will straighten out a few FAQs, but as it stands, it's a pretty tight rule set, but because it's so tight, there are some stuff that you get a bit confused with, and that's what we're here for. So please, if there's a question, chuck it in the comments to one of the videos. It's the best way, and either myself or the viewers will definitely respond with how to get it right. Anyway, I'm going to wrap up the video. Thank you very much for watching, and thank you very much for suggesting. I hope you liked it. I hope you agreed with it. And if I've got anything wrong, do comment, because that would be incredibly ironic. Anyway, thanks very much for watching. We'll be back soon with more Blood Bowl content. Happy blocking. Thanks very much for watching. We really appreciate your support. If you want to help support the channel even further, please like and subscribe, or come join us on our Patreon. We have early access to content. We get loads of feedback from you guys, and we try and do competitions as much as we can. Or you can get yourself some Bonehead podcast merch on our Spreadshirt site. So if you want to support a team, especially for the Bonehead Championship, you can pick up a shirt, a mug, things like that. It all helps support the channel, and we really appreciate it. Anyway, links below. Thank you very much. Happy blocking.